And will the Republicans, now it's a moment for the Republican Party, isn't it? Even for his contenders in the Republican Party, do they stand with him, or do they now cut him out of the Republican Party? It's that moment is now upon the Republican Party, because Donald Trump has been arrested now at the federal courthouse.
Well, my very first initial reaction is, even though we've been discussing this here and among other friends, colleagues, whatever, the fact that you just said that a former president of the United States has been arrested really hit home. Even though I knew this intellectually, this is going on, that he's been arrested in terms of a turning point, or the word arrested being used, and you used it quite appropriately. In terms of this being a turning point, it kind of remains to be seen. And to circle back to where I started, a lot can hinge, unfortunately, really, on whether Judge Cannon issues rulings that are very favorable to Donald Trump. She could conceivably, for example, say the trial won't be held until after Election Day 2024. And that could really affect all the legal and political calculations here regarding Trump's case. So that's one of many ways in which she is such a crucial, vitally important actor. Having said all that, I don't think we're at the point yet where we could say everything's blowing up in Trump's face by any means. This may be the start of that process, but we'll just have to see how this all plays out. And one other thing I should mention or emphasize regarding Florida, Florida is the state where in 2000, what was called the Brooks Brothers riot, a bunch of well-dressed, suit-clad George Bush supporters disrupted the count of votes in Florida, which may well have led to his ultimate victory in that very, very close election against Al Gore that year. I'm not saying that we're getting Trump supporters flooding into the courthouse. They won't be able to do that, presumably, or disrupting the court proceedings in a way that will cause the whole trial to be called off. That absolutely won't happen. But on top of everything else, you've got some very strong, adamant, maybe even rabid Trump supporters who are prepared to demonstrate, to cause disruptions, and to really turn up the heat on both the legal and political situations that Trump's indictment and trial are involved with.
Right. I'm also getting this. Trump also took to his social media before heading to court, and he has said, one of the saddest days in the history of our country, we are a nation in decline. So Trump, of course, actively playing that victim card, even though he's not on any known social media platforms. Sanjay Suri, he still launches his own social media platform, still gets the same media attention. And now he's also saying that one of the saddest days in the history of our country, we are a nation in decline. He was waiting for this to happen to play this card, wasn't he?
Well, from Trump, this is broad rhetoric of a repetitive kind. What is very telling is that through all this rhetoric, which we've been hearing over the past several days, he has not addressed any of the specific charges in that indictment that has been publicized. Everyone has seen it. He has seen it. He has not responded to anything specific. If his case was strong, surely he would have been critical in pointing out some of the elements or some of the content of that indictment. This kind of a broad, almost abuse, if you like, that this is a witch hunt, that America is in decline. This is standard Trump stuff to the extent that it's become almost stale. It's become predictable. We can almost anticipate that a few hours from now, this is again the kind of thing he will say. We are waiting to hear a specific response, and this is a serious charge, and it is the specifics that will decide the outcome.
Right, it's the specifics that will decide the outcome. But when has Trump ever, given us specifics? I'm also joined by Ray Locker, who's joining us on the broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Locker. A former US president has now been arrested over this entire classified documents case. Your first reaction to that? This is quite a watershed moment in American politics and in American history. At the same time, even a watershed moment for the Republican Party with the presidential elections right around the corner.
Well, my first reaction is it's about time. I mean, he took documents that weren't his to take. He kept them in an unsecured location. He showed them to other people. He lied about having them. He moved them around so people wouldn't find them. He lied again about having them. And now he's got no defense. So it's about time this happened, because if it was anybody else, it would have happened a long time ago.
Right. So you're saying that it's about time that this happened. Of course, there were a lot of charges against Donald Trump. Suddenly, this has stuck when it comes to, nailing him, when it comes to all the legal woes that he is facing. But I want to, look at the visuals that are taking place right outside the Miami courthouse. You have scores of Donald Trump supporters rallying around him. He has called this entire thing a witch hunt. When it comes to the kind of the finer points of a legal case against Donald Trump, Mr. Ray Locker, it never really matters, does it? It never really matters what are the charges against him, what is the conviction against him. He is still Teflon Don within the Republican Party, who has this cult-like status within one of the two big parties of US politics. And right ahead of the US presidential elections, you even see his opponents within the Republican Party are not willing to call him out because they fear his supporters.
Sure. Well, that's their own cowardice, and that's their problem. I mean, Chris Christie, the former New Jersey governor, has finally seen the light. I mean, after multiple times when Trump disappointed him, Trump even gave him COVID and Christie supported him. So he's finally come around. I think other people are ready to do that too. If they were really afraid of him, they wouldn't be running for president. I mean, Mike Pence, his own vice president, running for president now. They're all making these tepid attempts to try to differentiate themselves from him. It's going to happen more and more and more as time goes on. Trump leads now. We've seen leads evaporate. There's a lot of polling. I don't really take much of it seriously. I think he does have a hold on about 35% of the primary electorate. And if there's a multi-candidate field like the one we have now for a long time, that'll be enough to get him the nomination. But it's still early. It's only mid-June. And things don't really happen until February. So a lot can happen between now and then. And I think the cumulative effect of all of his legal problems, plus the stress that everybody felt during the 4 years of his presidency, is going to catch up to him.
Right. But, I've heard this before as well, that, this is like a turning point when it comes to Donald Trump's political career, that, the Republican Party could rally numbers against him. But you see the commitment by which not just the MAGA Republicans within Congress, but also on the street, how they rally around him. The crowds, the cheering, the posters, the placards, it tends to spook other Republicans into compliance. And Ray Locker, I want to bring this point up as well. You talk about Chris Christie. It's rehabilitation with Donald Trump is never off the table. Oftentimes you see a Republican will be criticizing him one day, next day he'll be supporting him. We see it with Lindsey Graham as well. We see it with so many other Republicans that, when it comes to politicking, they'll go against him. They'll call him an embarrassment. They call him this. They call him different names. But when he wins, when he rallies the supporters, that's when they change their tune. That malaise in the Republican Party doesn't seem to be over anytime soon.
No, that's to their everlasting shame, too. I mean, Lindsey Graham said, if we nominate Trump, we'll be wrecked and we'll deserve it. And the next thing you know, they're out playing golf together. Lindsey Graham is a total weather vane. You never know which way the wind's blowing with that guy. Others, I don't think Christie's coming back, but stranger things have happened. And it's just amazing the hold that this guy has on party members, mostly because of his devoted following, which I think is not quite as rabid as it may seem. I mean, after all, this is Florida. There's tons of weirdos down there. You can get, a few hundred people to show up outside a courtroom for Trump. Now, maybe not every day. So I just don't know how long this lasts. I think this indictment is damning. If you read the facts in the case, it's all pretty clear. He could win in a trial, no doubt about it, because trials have a way of, going in weird directions, particularly with this judge who seems like a total outlier. So, but I think long term, this is not a good thing for him. Is this the absolute turning point? I doubt it. But the cumulative effect of all of this, the New York indictment, this indictment, the one that's probably going to happen in Georgia, the one that may happen with January 6th, people who are, openly saying they're not going to support him or that he's not telling the truth, like William Barr, as former attorney general. That's adding up, and I think the reckoning will come. I just don't know what day that will be.
Right, but we are in a situation, Mr. Locker, that the facts don't really matter in US politics. I still remember the Russia collusion hearings, nothing happened. I still remember when it comes to that phone call he had with Zelensky, you even had, the whistleblower testify in front of Congress, nothing happened. He lost the elections. The Republicans didn't even agree to certify the elections. They all rallied around him. And so, the facts really don't matter. It's all about the political power that this man enjoys. And regardless of the legal troubles he faces, he still enjoys a lot of political power because he has a cult-like status in the Republican Party. And Sanjay, this point we bring up time and time again. This cult is so tough within the Republican Party. Even the moderate Republicans, the smart Republicans, the McCain level Republicans like a Mitt Romney and Adam Kissinger, even Liz Cheney, even though she was not a favorite of the Democrats, she still has taken a principled stand against Donald Trump. Yet their political position does not rise, their political stock doesn't rise within the Republican Party when it comes to facing off against Donald Trump.
I don't believe we should assume that this is an unstoppable cult. We have seen him facing a huge setback in the midterm elections. We have seen Trump lose an election and as incumbent, which is quite unusual. So there is a great deal of support that he did not get in the elections. There is a great deal of support he did not get, therefore, even among Republican voters, not enough to have turned the tide to get him back into the White House. So there is a limit to the infallibility of this cult power that we sometimes do project on him. Without doubt, you are absolutely right. In the face of all facts, in the face of all logic, in the face of all reasonable expectations, Trump has prevailed time and time again. Whether this will therefore continue forever and continue particularly past this issue of national defense is far from certain. We could be seeing the end of that cult run.
Right. And Mr. Loco, I want to ask you, when it comes to a significant base of the Republican Party, which is the moderate Republicans, which are not the the MAGA supporters, the QAnon supporters who tend to rally around Donald Trump, even though they're the most vocal, I think they get the most media attention. At the same time, the moderate Republicans who are the McCain supporters, the Mitt Romney supporters, do you think that there is a fear within the Republican Party among the sensible Republicans that our voter blocks will shift to Joe Biden's Democrats if we continue to rally around Donald Trump? Is that a fear that still exists among them? And can they do anything about it? Because it seems, as per all the opinion polls, as per the trend in which the Republican Party is going, that they are likely to pick Donald Trump as their candidate for the presidential elections.
Well, I think those Republicans you describe, who are Republicans because of, tradition or their beliefs, many of them are scared to death that Donald Trump is going to be their nominee again. They don't like him. They don't want to vote for him. They're not Democrats for legitimate reasons. You have to talk to each one for those particular reasons. But the Republicans I know don't like Donald Trump. They consider him an embarrassment, a circus performer. And they don't like it that he's hijacked their party. And many of them do not vote for him. They're voting, maybe not for Democrats, maybe they're not voting at all. They'll vote for other Republican candidates on the ballot, but they won't vote for Trump for president. And so that is a legitimate fear among those circles in the Republican Party. The man has lost the popular vote in the last two elections by 2.9 million to Hillary Clinton, by 7 million to Joe Biden. Only by the fluke of the U.S. Electoral College did he become a president in 2016. He lost in 2020 fairly overwhelmingly. And I think that would happen again. Previous commentator mentioned the midterm elections. Those were an embarrassment for the Republicans who thought that they would do tremendously well. And they didn't in large part because Trump-backed candidates in a lot of swing states crashed and burned because they were not appealing to swing voters. Nothing has changed. He is not appealing to swing voters either. And so the political professionals in the Republican Party who want a different kind of government are looking at this going, here we go again, and it's not favorable to them.
But Mr. Locker, it's about the energy a candidate can generate on the ground. At the end of the day, let's face it, when it comes to the presidential elections, be it the Democrats versus the Republicans, it's about who can charge up the base to come out and go to the polls. We saw in 2016, Hillary Clinton wasn't able to do that with the Democrats, which is why Donald Trump was able to kind of like whiz past her, primarily because the Electoral College factor is something we cannot ignore. The voodoo of the Electoral College is something that decides the next American president. And to an extent, is the problem with the Republican Party currently that they feel that when it comes to the swing states, the Florida, Pennsylvania, even Arizona, do they still feel that within the gamut of Republican Party leaders, Donald Trump is the only one who can secure the majority of the swing states if it's a face-off against Joe Biden?
I don't think they believe that. I don't think Trump can beat Joe Biden. I mean, Biden has weaknesses. He's old. Everybody knows that. That's his main problem. He'd be 86 years old if he finishes a second term. That's by far the oldest anybody has ever been. And that is a demanding job. And it's hard on anybody, and even somebody in their 40s or 50s. So that's Biden's weakness. But, Trump's not a spring chicken either. So that kind of negates that weakness against with Biden. And most people who say the choice between Biden and Trump, they'd pick Biden. So that's a problem for Republicans. He's not going to carry the swing states. What has made Trump more powerful in Arizona and Georgia than before? I don't think anything has. We just saw again today more positive economic news. The inflation rate continues to drop. That helps Biden. The war in Ukraine and how he has rallied people to support the Ukraine government, that helps Biden too. The economy is going fairly well, although not everybody recognizes that. There's really been nothing that strengthens Trump in the swing states, since 2020 election. He's been indicted twice. He'll probably be indicted twice more. The January 6th revelation. So Arizona, Georgia, I don't think he's stronger there. He may be stronger in Florida, which used to be a swing state and for some reason has moved away from that. Ohio, no longer a swing state, but new states are kind of coming into play that I think are going to make it tougher and tougher for Trump.
Right. When Mr. Locker, I'm looking at Twitter, I'm looking at all the reactions coming in from the Republican voices who are saying we are here today outside of the courthouse in Miami to show you that we are standing with you against this witch hunt and weaponization of the government. The narratives have already started. The narratives have already started in favor of Donald Trump. And to an extent, I don't think any major Republican leader will come out and say it's time for us to move on. I think they will get swept into this entire narrative about defending this man just to take on Joe Biden. Sanjay, do you think that'll be the way the Republican Party will swing in the days to come? Because the fight and the narrative war has just started.
I think we should not read too much into a number of demonstrators outside the courtroom, particularly those that we see on camera. You can position your camera at the point you choose, collect 20 people and have a crowd filling the screen and say, this is what the people want. We need to be a little watchful of that. We need to be watchful even of the actual numbers on the street other than what the camera can pick up. We know that there were an estimate for about 50,000 demonstrators. Certainly what we are seeing is a fraction of that. So even if these small numbers were to be indicative, we do not have indications yet of a massive turnout. And speaking of scenes that you might see on the street, if I may indulge one little memory. I was in San Francisco and the USS Enterprise was sailing by, and everybody dropped everything to run to the shore and cheer and applaud. For Americans, defense is the ultimate. They worship their defense forces. They worship their defense capabilities. This is the ultimate. It's like God to American people. To see a compromise on that is not something a lot of Americans are easily going to absorb for the sake of Donald Trump.
Right. I'm also getting a reaction from Mike Pompeo, who's also reacted to this. Trump had classified documents when he shouldn't have had them. And when given the opportunity to return them, he chose not to do that. That's inconsistent with protecting America's soldiers. And that's quite rich coming in from Mike Pompeo, isn't it, Ray Lockett? You have some Republican voices who are turning on Donald Trump. Of course, Kerry Lake has come out, giving her support to Donald Trump. She herself is playing the Trump card when it comes to the fight for the Arizona governor that she lost. But also, we also have Republican Congressman Ken Buck, who's made a very interesting point. He just told CNN, I would not feel comfortable with a convicted felon in the White House. He's not even ruling out the fact that Donald Trump could enter the White House.
I mean, yeah, Ken Buck's a former prosecutor. No wonder he wouldn't feel comfortable with that. And Mike Pompeo, for him to say that is remarkable. He's actually showing some backbone for the first time after being, supine in his role as CIA chief and Secretary of State for Trump. He obviously knows better. He's not a stupid guy. He's actually very intelligent. So more and more people are, stepping up and saying this is not the right thing to do. And Kerry Lake, I mean, my God, what a lunatic. I mean, she was nobody a couple of years ago, and now she's somewhat a voice for this lunatic fringe among the Republican Party. Took a winnable governor's race in Arizona and lost it because she was too extreme there. And you got to realize Arizona is one of the most Republican states in the country, or was for a long time. It's been trending away from Republicans because of demographic issues and because of the extreme Republican candidates they've had. Blake Masters in the Senate, Kerry Lake is for governor. This is a state where Republican Doug Ducey won the previous two governors' races fairly handily because he was not a lunatic. He was a responsible Republican elected official. So Trump and his allies have taken that state and thrown it